everybody, welcome back to the Talk About Town. Happy New Year and welcome back. Hope everybody's staying warm and staying off icy roads and such. Keith Owens, Jason Wilson, and Will Misegades with Redfish Inspections today. We wanted to do a little something different today. We wanted to do more of an informational segment. I know in the homes that we've been showing and some of our clients, we've been running into some homes that have flooded in the wake of Hurricane Harvey. And so we've seen some good things, we've seen some bad things, and we've seen some ugly things. So we wanted to talk about the good, bad, and the ugly about dealing with homes that have flooded, whether it be Hurricane Harvey or anything of that nature. It could be even flooding from frozen pipes. So obviously we've seen some pictures of some beautiful homes that have been renovated. They've got great wood floors, they've got new kitchens, granite. But how do you know it was done right? How do you know what's behind the walls? How do you know if you're going to have issues later on? So Will is here to basically help us with that and kind of look past some of the pretty things that we see in some of these homes. And that's what we really like to do, helping our clients. It's not just getting you to the prettiest home at the best price. It's really making sure that home is going to take care of y'all, making sure that you're healthy in the home. We're dealing with clients right now that have actually dealt with mold inside their homes, and it really affects your health. So we want to make sure that our clients never have to experience that. So I guess really the first question is, we've seen some things and everything looks good on the surface, but what do you do? What can you do to really find out what maybe still be existing, or if they really went through and did everything right on the flood?
Sure. One of the first things that you would want to know is, did the house actually flood? So you guys are great at getting that information for your clients. And then, if you're able to give that information to the inspector, then the inspector will be able to zero in your focus more on that part of the inspection. But when we walk in a house and we know that the house has flooded, or if we know that the area in general has flooded, even though that house did not, what we're looking at is in particular the first or the lower third part of the walls, because that's where, if they didn't gut the entire house, they're going to cut that lower third part of the wall out to remove the insulation, clean up all the studs, clean everything up that they can, and then they're going to build it back up once everything is dry. And so if we see that line, or if we see a difference in pattern in the finish of the wall, then that'll give us a pretty good clue. Then unfortunately we don't have X-ray vision, but we try to utilize the technology that we have at hand, and so we try to stay on top of what's out there. And so we've been using infrared thermal imaging technology for many years now. And so we will scan those walls to see if, one, there's actually insulation in the exterior walls, if it was installed properly, because those are different clues that we'll be able to find with different thermal patterns, and just to see if it's done properly. What we've noticed with flipped homes is in the kitchens and bathrooms, sometimes some of the flippers haven't removed all of those walls, because either the kitchen is pretty and they don't want to risk damaging it. The reality is that you will have mold inside those walls. We can't see through it, but we can try to see if there is some kind of clue on the edges, if there's swelling in the cabinet doors, at the base of the cabinet. So we're going to look at clues like that. We'll use moisture meters to see if there is elevated moisture in those cabinets, and just try to get the big picture essentially.
Yeah. We have actually looked at homes, and the cabinets look freshly painted, and obviously it's new flooring, new granite. And what I noticed, because we really try to look at the finer details, the exterior of the house, the inside of the house, and we actually looked at the small kick panel, the very base of the cabinets, and you could see the wood starting to separate just from all that moisture there. And I immediately knew, if they didn't remove the cabinets, and if that's an exterior wall, chances are they didn't get the insulation out of there. you know, it didn't get a chance to dry out. And if it didn't get a chance to dry out, you've just got nothing, mold growing back there. And so that's what you run into, you automatically know. But if you don't have an agent or an inspector that really knows to look at the real small things, even at the base of the ground that's covered up, you know, you just don't know what's back there.
Another thing that you could do is make sure you get air sampling done in the house for mold, and surface sampling if there is evidence of something, just to determine what exactly there is. So we provide that service with our home inspections. It's an add-on service, but I would highly recommend getting that done, because it's one thing to have the mold remediated, but you just want to know if it was done properly and if you still have mold spores within the house. And so that test, those 2 air samples at minimum on the interior and 1 on the exterior, will be able to give us more clues as to whether you actually have mold inside the house or not.
Yeah, and I know we do have some clients that, you know, their homes are flooded, they've opened up the walls, they've removed all the insulation, and they've really kept everything with fans going and drying for a good 3 to 4 weeks before they really did anything. And that's kind of one of our questions that we ask people is, what process did you go through before you put your drywall up? People don't really think about it, but you know, all of the wood in your walls and everything, as far as all your studs, they really need to dry out, you know. And if you're buying a house, if you've already bought a house maybe a month ago, it probably hasn't really had time to really fully dry out. And you may still have the potential to, you know, have a little bit of moisture there. And that's what that infrared will really do, is, you know, kind of help you out, is really find if that moisture's still, you know, back there behind the walls.
We did many inspections throughout the reconstruction process of many homes throughout the city. And one of the things that a lot of the sellers wanted to do, or just regular homeowners, was to determine where all they had elevated moisture and if they still had it. And then we would write a report showing the different rooms with the walls open and showing them whether they had elevated moisture or no moisture, or low moisture content within the studs and the sill plates. And we'd write that report, and they keep that in their files, so that when they do resell the house, they can say, hey, we did it correctly, we made sure everything was dried, typically under 15%, and then pass that on to the new buyers.
Yeah. I know we were very blessed. We didn't flood, but like a lot of people, I know Jason got, you know, some water in through the roof, and you know, I got a little bit of water in through the roof, and it happens quite a bit. That's pretty normal. I mean, water is going to find its way inside the house. So even if you didn't flood, I mean, I know we had Will over and he did an infrared scan, and it tells you if it's actually still active or not. So if you've got a water spot in your ceiling, well, should I paint over it? You may not want to paint over it until you find out if it's still active, if you've still got some water coming in through the roof somewhere. So that's always good to do. Even if you didn't flood and you just have some, you know, water through the roof, it's a good process.
Absolutely. A lot of the houses that we inspected after the hurricane had wind-driven rain coming through the roof, and hopefully it won't ever happen again. So those stains are just a one-time event. Now, can we guarantee it's going to be like that? Not 100%. But if it's still dry after the recent heavy rains after the hurricane, then most likely it happened due to the volume of water that just came down on us. So you want to make sure that that's taken care of.
So what are some of the other things that you're finding that are some of the major issues to look out for, besides, you know, just some cabinets being painted over and glossed over and some things like that?
Some of the things that we look out for are your doors. So if the house has flooded, you really want to replace those doors. Why? Because you've got contaminated water inside that wood. And so some of the flippers want to try to save money by not replacing the doors, even though they haven't swelled during, you say swelled? Yeah. So even though they look fine, if they were in the flood waters, they've got contaminated water in it. Same thing with the floors, wood floors, tile floors, any type of flooring. We highly recommend replacing all the flooring because of the contaminated water that would be under, even though it's dry. And so
even a tile floor.
Correct, even a tile floor. Yeah, during the reconstruction process, we did a lot of scans of the floorings, and we could find still spots that were wet, and we knew that there was still water under there. And so ultimately, it is an expense, but for your health, it's much better to just replace it all.
Yeah, I know, kind of going back to what you said as far as the mold sampling and mold testing, I think that's pretty important, even though it's an additional service for your own peace of mind, and to have that, even when you resell the home.
Absolutely.
Again, to have that in your file to show, hey, we did get this testing done before we bought it to make sure that it was good. I know when we go to resell a home, those are all things that we gather, so we do have that available for the next person. But even if it flooded 1 inch or 1 foot, a lot of people I've seen, they haven't removed anything.
Yeah.
It's just 1 inch, your 2x4 is here, 1 inch is just down there. But you can really look at the baseboards, and if you see some black mold coming through, it's growing.
Or
it's not
simple
gonna-
separation from the wall.
Yeah, cracking, swelling of baseboards, small little things like that. Even if you just got a little bit on the wood, you can see the wood starting to cup and swell and crack and such. And again, if you've got someone who's not used to looking for something like that, they just maybe overlook
Miss
it.
it. Mhm.
Yeah, they'll miss
Absolutely.
it. And they don't see the big picture behind the wall, which is something that maybe you've got some wood rot now, you've got mold. There's a lot of expense, with that, and there's a lot of health issues that come with that too.
Another thing that you could do is, I know a lot of the cities around here required permits for reconstruction because they didn't want an influx of non-licensed people doing just fly-by-night contractors. And so it added an extra expense on the seller's side to get things fixed up, but there is somewhat of a guarantee-ish that things were done properly. And so when a house flooded and the water went into the outlets and things like that, all of that wiring needs to be replaced technically. And so that permit will show you if they've replaced what all they replaced in the reconstruction. So.
Yeah, so make sure you have new outlets if it's flooded. That's always good. And I know that just kind of aside from the inspection part, but the biggest question that we get asked is, will the fact that the home flooded affect our value? Should this home be priced less because it flooded during Hurricane Harvey as compared to something else? In my experience, if it's only flooded once, obviously Hurricane Harvey, that was a 500-year flood. That was something that was very, very unique to the area, and it doesn't happen, every year or every 5 years, 10 years. It's a very unique situation, but we haven't noticed that necessarily. Obviously, there's concern with it, as there should be. Has everything been done correctly? But we haven't necessarily priced homes differently just because they flooded. Obviously, one of the things that we do is we really get as much information as we can. What was the process y'all did? Permits, and everything like that before we really put a value on it. But I think the good thing is people who are just, I know a lot of people that are just now getting cabinets in their kitchen back in order. So life is just now getting back to normal. The good news is if you do want to sell, it's like, well, I'm just we're looking to move anyways. It shouldn't impact your value. Not from what we've noticed. Have you noticed anything differently?
No, not at all. And I would add on top of that, even if you're not going to sell and staying in the home, peace of mind again of getting those inspections and the sampling to make sure that the family is safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, get it done now, while things are still fresh. So if something is behind the walls that you don't see, at least you know to remedy it now as opposed to later when it may affect your health. And like we've said, just keep a file, what you've done, contractors, just the different things that have been done as far as the steps and processes to get you to that point. And if you ever do decide to sell, when you decide to sell, hopefully you'll call us, obviously, but then we'll have that information so we can really convey that to the next buyer so they're comfortable when they're buying a home.
Right.
Because inevitably you'll do that seller's disclosure and you have to disclose, it did flood, we had 1 foot, but this is everything that we've done.
Protecting each other, sellers and buyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's always a pleasure of working with these two guys. So
Oh,
because
Keep going.
Yeah,
they really do care about their people, about their buyers, their sellers, and they want to make sure that everything is taken care of properly. I've personally used Keith a couple times, and he's really spot on with the whole process, and both of them communicate throughout the entire process and make sure that you're well taken care of. And as a professional in the inspection industry, it makes it easier for me as well to do my job working with people who are true professionals and really care about their clients. So I want to thank you guys for that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
No, I think the biggest, one of the biggest things that's helped me is being able to follow Will, whether it be in my own inspection or other home inspections. We've actually walked with Will and gone through things because we don't want to just hand over the inspection report. That's probably one of the most stressful parts of buying a home and even selling a home. Oh my gosh, they made this huge request.
You get a 48 page report.
Oh yeah,
Your
I mean
house
it's
is
nothing to get
horrible.
a 50-page report
Yeah.
nowadays, just because people like Will are so detailed. But because we've been through it before, we understand the different parts of construction now from dealing with Will and his patience and telling us and educating us. I would say we're a lot more familiar with the process than a lot of people. We're not going to just hand you a report, whether buyer or seller, and go, look through it and just let me know what you think.
Right.
We're going to go through each page with you and each item, and Will does the same thing. He's going to go through with you and go, okay, this is major. This looks like it's really bad, but it's really not. And so we try to remove the stress, the fear, and the concern from the process and really boil it down to what's most important. And that's extremely important. I mean, that's our goal, just to remove the stress. Your motto is, looking past the distractions, I believe.
To find the truths.
To find the truth. And that's what it's really all about. Let's just remove the distractions, the stress, and really boil it down and make it a stress-free, enjoyable process.
Absolutely.
And that's the key to having Will today is that don't be afraid to buy a house. Don't be afraid to sell your house. Just make sure you're doing it the right way. Protect each other, and everything will be okay.
Yep. Well, we appreciate you joining us today, folks. We'll definitely have Will back as far as just some of the things that we encounter in the real estate world. And we'll be back soon again as well. Just kind of go over some different things, maybe rates, get a lender on, some things like that, and just address